Okay, welcome to our Feedyard Extension webinar series that we host. Hopefully you're logged in and watching this online or live here today. And we're trying to bring you timely topics that are hopefully of use and value. And then if so, we always have access to more information during that or during the webinar presentation. If you're watching this at any time, you feel free to go to our address there, the go.unl.edu Feedlot webinar fall 18, mostly because we'd like to have your feedback of what you liked or didn't like, and also any other future topics you want us to bring to you via this format. So happy today that our topic is on occupational safety, and our speakers, Aaron Yoder, who's associate professor at the Med Center as well as at BSE. And so, Aaron, you can go ahead a slide so they can see your introduction. And he's going to describe some projects that they're working on, and I think has some real value and potential opportunity for helping feed yards, especially given insurances and obviously the emphasis on safety anyway in our feed yard production system. So, Aaron, happy to have you.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity, and I guess I'd like to say that this safety information probably goes beyond the feed yards to all cattle and other agricultural operations as well. My background started off in agricultural engineering, and it led me to the path of ag safety and health. So I pulled in a lot of the ag engineering and ag systems management side of stuff as well. I was just at a conference this morning over in Council Bluffs, and the opening speaker talked about the systems approach to running an operation and including safety as part of that system. And we'll get into that as we start talking. So thanks for having me. So again, today's topics, improving the safety and health of cattle feed yard workers and all that are involved with the operation. Again, I'm Aaron Yoder. I work at the UNMC at their medical center, but also have a partial appointment through Nebraska Extension in the Biological Systems Engineering Department, where I teach tractor safety in the summertime around the state to 14 and 15-year-olds, as well as work with their AgrAbility program, which helps farmers with disabilities get back into farming safety. So those are sort of my extension roles there. Here at the medical center, I'm part of a NIOSH, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, Ag Safety Center. There are 10 of these around the country. 9 are regionally specific. One of them is focused on children's safety and health around agriculture. Just a quick screenshot here, and then I'll share more about our centers later on when I get into the resources section. But I grew up in Pennsylvania, went to Penn State, Purdue, a few different universities. I was trying to hit all the Big Ten universities, but I guess they keep adding more, so I gave up on that. But happy to be here in Nebraska and working here for the past 5 years with Extension and with the Ag Center here. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about a project that came about based on a few organizations that I'm part of. I was in an organization called the Ag Safety and Health Council of America, and there was someone from the Texas cattle feeders in that group, and it sort of alerted me to some of the needs of the cattle industry. So we took a look at our region and what our center could do, and we found out that cattle feed yards tend to have a pretty high rate of fatal and non-fatal injuries. So when we compare those to agriculture, forestry, and fishing, which is a group the labor statistics pull us all together in, the feed yards and beef ranching and cattle handling altogether have a 4 times higher rate than the rest of what's considered a hazardous industry, which is about 34 times higher than the average of all industries. We obviously know some industries are less hazardous than others, but that was something that sort of led us down this path. We're in a pretty good position here, being in the middle of the country, in Nebraska especially, that we have about half of all the feed yards in our region. We have a 7-state region that our Ag Safety Center covers, but it is housed here in Nebraska. And we cover almost half of all the feed yard workers. So we felt like we were in a good location geographically and with some of the resources we had in the state to handle this topic. we've done a couple pilot projects, sort of doing some preliminary investigations into this, and decided to apply for a four-year project to work on this topic and see what we could do. So through that same organization, I mentioned connecting with the Texas cattle feeders, we organized a feed yard safety roundtable where we pulled in people from several states. We had some representation from Nebraska, Texas, Kansas, and their KLA, and some of the different groups, as well as some insurance companies. One of the other members of this organization I'm in was from a larger insurance company, and they said, well, we would be happy to share our workers' compensation data summarized so that we could see where some of the injuries were and help reducing the rates of workers' compensation to some of the larger yards and some of the people they insure. So they were all in with that as well. So working together there, these were just a few of the bullet points that came out of that conversation of things we could work on. Using that insurance data, both to reduce the cost of injury and illness, as well as reduce the number of injuries and illnesses, and those go hand in hand. And then combine whatever efforts we can in feed yard safety, occupational safety, and then the insurance industry and some of the resources that they have. So that led to a great connection here in Omaha with Gallagher Insurance and their feed yard safety person, that Mike Keenan's his name, but he does a lot of feed yard safety programming out on the yards that they insure. So we're trying to capitalize and build on that as well. And then the goals of the program, like I said, the ultimate goal is to reduce those injuries and fatalities to the workers. But in addition to that, what that's going to do is reduce the workers' compensation claims at feed yards and reduce the cost of that. So we're doing this by coming up with sort of a gold standard of feed yard safety training materials. We know there's some out there. We're repackaging some, reworking some, helping them fit the different clients' needs, and then develop sort of sustainable workers for, we're going to call it a commendation program. So commending people that are doing a good job with safety. And we're in the process of creating that program right now in combination with an advisory board, which we meet with the Nebraska cattlemen at some of their meetings and some of their feed yard and feedlot groups, as well as our insurance and some other feed yards that are insured by the insurance companies we're working with. So out of those goals, our main objectives for this are to develop that training program. So all good research projects include a little bit of data collection, and this word was new to me, but ethnographic research. We have an anthropologist that used to be a cowboy in Idaho and now works in Wisconsin, but he has an anthropology background. So he goes out onto the yards for us and figures out why people are doing the things they're doing, trying to get the cultural side of things built in there, as well as looking at that qualitative analysis of the insurance data. So then we're looking at how do we implement this research program or our developed safety program on our control group. Again, since it's a research project, looking a little bit at can we make a difference? So we're going to compare the insurance data of the yards that go through the program versus other insured yards by the same company that have not gone through the program to see if we make a difference by having this program and if we should continue it. And that's our goal for this. And then the last part is just evaluating, are we getting lower missed work days? Are we getting fewer and less severe workers' compensation claims? And that way we'll know the program's working. So out of these objectives, the first thing we did was survey the industry. So we worked with the Nebraska cattlemen and Gallagher Insurance and distributed a survey of the safety needs of the industry, looking at the need for safety training, what type of training needs are out there, what types of materials are they currently using. Some of the feedback we got in the survey so far is that most people, and myself included, prefer hands-on training versus web-based training and other things. So our resources are going to be tailored towards either consultants doing hands-on training or the feed yard managers or employees or safety people doing hands-on training. They've identified things like cattle handling and use of horses as activities where they're at the greatest risk. Oftentimes when we talk about safety in a lot of operations, feed yards and other places, we mainly talk about regulatory compliance. So what do we have to do to comply with the regulations? And there aren't many regulations related to cattle handling and horsemanship. There are lots of regulations on the mill side when we talk about using machinery and other things like that. So oftentimes the trainings are more focused in the areas that there are regulations. So trying to build some materials to help reduce the injuries in the areas where there may not be as many regulations. And then one of the things that sort of crossed across all the different activities were slips, trips, and falls as being the most frequent source of injury. So we see quite a few of those. So we're trying to work on our first set of materials doing that. So speaking of topics of materials, we came up with what we call the Feedyard 15. So these are the 15 topics that emerged as far as being areas of concern of producers or areas that they felt like they could use some new and different or maybe more materials to help support. So we're building our commendation program around these 15 with the goal of every yard would pick one of these topics and do it per month for a whole year. So out of these 15, pick 12 of the topics, one to do each month. And then both the yard would get a certification or a certificate that they completed the program, and then any employees that went through the whole thing. So that way the employees get some sort of credentialing as well as the yard. And both of these should help reduce the cost of insurance premiums as well as potentially reducing those workers' compensation claims, which is one of our main goals. And you can look at the topics there and look through those. We're still working with our advisory board to narrow some of these down, and in the process now, we're just starting our second year of this project. The first year was more of a fact-finding. The second year, we hope in January or February to start some of the trainings on these topics. So that's probably enough about the program itself. I'm going to share a little bit about where you can find some resources now. And you're welcome to reach out to me to be a participant in this program as well as we kick it off for the next, like I mentioned, it's a 4-year project. The next 3 years, we're going to be working pretty hard to try to get this out there in the industry and being used. Before, I always like to preface talking about what materials are out there. Oftentimes we go to Google and other places, but understanding that just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it might be good or useful. I always like to use this quote from Abraham Lincoln about the internet, right? So that's one thing. Again, teaching the same thing to my 14-year-old son now. He's thinking he can find everything he needs. And the conference I was at this morning talked about a different way of teaching now that there is more information. Our job's more to help discern what's good and what's not good information and help guide people to pick it because there's a ton of information out there. So I'm going to share a few sources that I like to use that I've participated in the past and help build up. And again, if you have questions about these, reach out to me later on. That would be great. So the first one is our CS Cash Center, our Central State Center for Ag Safety and Health here at the Medical Center in Omaha. We get, like I mentioned before, the NIOSH funding for our program. It helps sustain this whole center. We do many different programs that range from bench scale science that they do in the medical side of things, the whole way up to the outreach type programs that I and a few others here do. So we have lots of different links and resources there. Most of the information I'm going to be talking about today, if you look on the left-hand side there, it says Young and Beginning Farmers, Safety and Health Resources. It's a great summary sheet that comes up and has links to most of these resources that I'm mentioning. So there's lots of good resources out there. And if you have questions, you'd like to filter some through us, we'd be happy to do that as well. As well as now we're trying to tailor some of these to fit the feed yard industry. Our centers there, I mentioned there being 10 or 11 of us, have a YouTube channel with lots of different information, lots of information in English and Spanish up there, and a few other niche languages. But it's just YouTube and then US Ag Centers where you can find a whole list and playlists of different types of training videos. Another one of those sources is the National Ag Safety Database, or NASD. I can remember when this information system started, it was actually the National Ag Safety Disc, because it was just a collection of ag safety specialist stuff in PDF format on a CD. It's transformed itself into a website that has both a topic database, you can see browse by topic there, as well as a search bar. So we can go there. All this information's been vetted by other safety professionals. Some of it's a little bit dated. Like I mentioned, a lot of the original resources did come from extension safety specialists. Now a lot of the information is coming from our ag centers. The funding source has sort of shifted from the USDA funding a lot of safety work to NIOSH funding a lot of the safety work done in agriculture. I'm also an advocate for e-extension. If you haven't checked it out, there's a lot of good resources that have been pulled together from extension specialists across the country. Here in Nebraska, it shows your local extension being Nebraska Extension. It follows people wherever they go and pops up that state in that little box. But we have a ag safety and health section on there where there's lots of different resources that we can use, and that's just extension.org/ag safety. What we've done in that site is summarize some of the good resources that are out there, put a quick one-page handout about the topic, and then links to various other resources. So there are resources for many projects. There's some mobile apps there. There are some self-paced learning programs, like the Ag Safety for You online course is one that I put up there and host. It's general agricultural safety and health information, but a lot of it applies to whatever type of operation you may have, whether you do field crops, raising cattle, even the feed yard situation. So some good stuff there. There's resources for instructor-led training, links to webinars and other topics, and then you can see some of the other topics over in the bottom right of this page, everything from animal health, safety, chemical safety, confined spaces, and that sort of thing. So lots of good information there, again, submitted by professionals from all over the country. Another resource I'd like to share is the Ag Risk Library. A lot of times when we talk about risks in agriculture or risk management, we think of crop loss, animal loss, that sort of thing. But one part of that is the human factor to it. So what are we doing to protect and the risks of the humans on our operations? So in addition to the other types of risk management information that's on here, there's a lot of good safety and health information. And circling back around to what I heard from my speech this morning at the conference I was at, taking a look at risk management plans and taking a look at the whole systems approach. How do we include safety and safety management in our whole system as we set up our operations and go about that? So there's some good resources there. Another four-letter word that nobody likes to talk about is OSHA. Actually, it's a four-letter acronym, not a word. But anyhow, they provide funding every year to create, through their Susan Harwood grant program, to create training materials. So there's a whole list of different training materials related to, again, oftentimes this regulatory compliance stuff. There's a lot of stuff on grain bin safety, grain handling, mill processing, that type of thing on this site. A lot of the materials are in both English and Spanish, so it's a great place to look for some safety materials if you need to cover a specific topic. I like to go there and just look and see what's available and see what fits in. You can see one across the top there talks about fall protection in different places that we're doing different work. Mentioned the slips, trips, and falls being some of the big things that were of concern or showed a lot of injury in the feed yard industry. Our funding agency is another place. So NIOSH, which is run through the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, they have an whole page on agricultural, forestry, and fishing. This is where they also have links to all the 11 ag centers that are out there to look at specific topics in there. So sometimes looking at a different region that may be doing the same type of production is beneficial. So looking around on their pages for resources as well. And I'd be happy to help anybody find something if they were looking for a specific topic. And then from the academic world, sometimes looking at some of the most recent stuff or some research that is going on helps us as well. for a specific industry. There are two main journals that we have a lot of safety and health information related to agriculture and animal production in. That would be the Journal of Agrimedicine. It comes at it more from the health and the veterinary side of things. And then the Journal of Ag Safety and Health, which is run by the Ag Engineering, Agricultural, American Society of Ag and Biological Engineers. So this comes at it more from the housing, the machinery, that side of things. So there's different groups there that for these journals that are helpful at finding additional information. So I encourage you to check those out as well if you're looking for a specific thing. And if you're looking, again, for research side of things, I like Google Scholar as well. Type a few keywords in there and you can find some of the more current research on various topics beyond safety and health as well. And then finally, just to present to you a few organizations. I mentioned Aska early on as far as getting me connected with some other people that do similar things, the insurance industry, other safety and health professionals, some of the larger companies and some of the larger feed yards. I mentioned the Texas cattle feeders being part of this and some of those groups, and it's a great place to share information. This clip was taken off their website. They had a roundtable or another summit meeting in Scottsdale, Arizona back in February. They're planning another large meeting of the group coming up in Las Vegas in March of 2020. So something to look out for. But they have a few other programs. You can see the Ag Sharp link at the top. That's smaller workshops they do. And they're interested in developing one on feed yard safety. And I'll probably help them take the lead on that and get that set up for them. Another organization of agricultural safety and health professionals that also intersects with business. So a lot of research, educators, extension and outreach people are in this that deal with safety and health in the AgrAbility program I talked about. Last year's conference was in Nova Scotia. This coming year will be a little closer. We're in Des Moines, Iowa, sometime around the last week of June. So that's another organization that's great to network with to get some of these resources from other safety managers and other members of the industry. And then finally, I had to throw this in here because I'm a part of this organization as well. If you're interested in doing safety days in your community, the Progressive Ag program has a pretty strong base here in Nebraska. And we have lots of different people that promote this. Some organizations like to take it on. They provide all the resources you need to put on a community safety day. So if you're interested in doing safety and health research or outreach into your community, the Progressive Ag Foundation is great for that. So I would encourage you to check them out if you would like to do that. Other than that, I'm going to leave you with a link to our website as well as my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to help you out with any of your safety and health needs, whether it's planning a program or looking for specific resources, doing internal safety audits or doing checklists and that sort. Whatever type of safety and health resources you'd like to have, we'd be happy to help you out through our center. And I always have to put in my plug for our funding source for this project. Again, that's the NIOSH funding that comes to our Central State Center. So thank you, and I'm going to turn it back over and put the last slide up there.
Very good, Aaron. One question that comes to mind before I open it up is maybe go back to your feed yard 15 and those different topics. So are there, I don't know if you can scroll back to that slide where you had the 15, but the question I have is on those topics, there's materials that are kind of available now if they want to start that progression of like once a month. In other words, where are these all developed now or they're in development now?
So they're in development. Our goal is to have at least 3 of these. Slips, trips, and voles is going to be one that we're working on right now, to have 3 of these topics available. I think cattle processing was the second one we were going to do. And then I already have a ton of material on tractors and machinery. So those 3 will probably be the first 3 that we'll have available early next year. There are materials for most of this stuff out there. We're just trying to put it in a package that's easy for people to use.
Yeah, it struck me as you're discussing this that there's a lot of things that you referenced for places to go. But as you know, it's good if it's packaged together in one kind of a one-stop shop for feed yards, and make it as simple as possible for them to get to. Plus, another benefit I see is that you kept alluding that many of these are available in Spanish. So on these Feedyard 15, will you also have most of that available, at least in Spanish as well?
Yes, we have an in-house person here that actually has some other programs that are working just with the Hispanics on feed yards. So she's going to be a valuable resource. And then we have a gentleman from Kearney that does safety training, and he's going to help us actually go out and do some trainings in Spanish. He's going to partner up with the insurance company and sort of shadow around the trainer that has lots of experience to build up some. And then hopefully we'll be offering some trainings in Spanish as well.
On your tractor loader part, is that also one of the parts I worry about is the mixers,
Yes.
the feed truck mixers, or the mixers if they're pulled by a tractor. Is that included in that equipment discussion for feed yards where the mixers
are?
Yes,
it is. So the power transmission from the tractor to that, as well as the actual thrown objects and everything else that goes along with that, making sure nobody's inside of them. And we see lots of injuries like that as well.
So if a feed yard wanted to start this process tomorrow, what should they do? Reach out to you, and when do you expect the 3 that you're working on now to kind of be available?
Our goal is by mid-January to have those available. We'd like yards to start training in January. Again, people can hop on at any time, but our goal right now, my graduate student's going to have a busy Christmas break.
Super. Any questions from participants? Okay, I would remind everybody that if you have more information, certainly, or more interest for more information, contact Aaron on this specific topic, and would certainly welcome your feedback and evaluation of this program, as well as all the other materials we have online. Just go to this go.unl.edu Feedlot webinar fall 18 and give us your feedback. We'd sure appreciate it, so we can continue to try and bring together things. Aaron, it strikes me we should also then do some follow-up maybe once you have more of those materials and can give some more detail on just that Feedyard 15, because that seemed pretty exciting to me and quite useful for people to do a training once a month, and including I'm thinking about our university facility. So
Yes.
Thanks for doing this today, and appreciate your presentation. With that, we'll sign off, and hope you find this useful.
All right.